Set Life. I'm Amber Buteau, and this is
Kelly Leger.
And once again, we have a friend of the studios here with us today. And she has, again, another incredible story of how she got into the industry, why she's in the industry, and what she's doing in the industry. So welcome to the show today, Monica.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Welcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's always fun to have somebody on that's used to being in front of the camera. We say this all the time. We have a lot of guests on that make the magic happen. They're always behind the camera. So it's like the first few minutes of the show, we're saying, okay, breathe. It's all right. Don't be nervous. Just be you, and all of that. But we don't ever have that problem with people who act.
Well, that's true. We still do sometimes get nervous, but we still love being in front of the camera, so it's good.
We just never see you sweat. You're just like
Yeah.
cool, calm.
They're like all excited.
Yeah, we just act like we're not nervous.
That's it.
Yep.
Acting. Benefit of actors.
Da-ding. There it is. So, okay, let's jump into your story where you started, and did you think you were going to be in this industry, or was it something where they say the bug bit you later in life, or from a young age you were like, this is what I always wanted to do? Where did that start for you?
Definitely started later in life. So growing up, I was always in the arts. So I did ballet and tap and jazz from 3 years old. And then, jazz a little later, ballet and tap since 3. I played my viola since 10, always in the arts.
Wow.
And then later in life, you kind of go, okay, well, now I got to, grow up and do something real and get a real job.
Get a real job.
Yeah.
So they say.
So they say.
Yeah.
Went to college, got a degree in marketing, and then went on to corporate America. And I was there for many, many years, and realized that I was missing something. And I was at a time in my life where I felt I needed a creative outlet. I needed something that was just for myself. Yeah. And this was like 2016, and I was like, I'm going to go take an acting class just like on a whim. And I did. I fell absolutely in love with it.
Oh, how brilliant.
Yes. And it was to the point where I was like going to work, 9 to 5 or 9 to 7, 8, whatever.
Yeah.
And then going to the studio and like either crewing or going to class or whatever I could do in terms of acting or even being behind the camera, whatever I could do.
After work, you would go to do that.
After work.
Wow.
And we would be there till like 2 a.m. I was at a studio that they were like producing films, and I would do it on weekends. And I actually had a girlfriend that was like, she was like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you going to work? And then like, you're always here. And I'm like, I cannot get away. And so it got to the point where I just realized that this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And at first, by the way, it was, like taking class was, since we're talking about being in front of the camera, it was terrifying, but also like exhilarating and like something I'd never really done, even though I was used to being on stage because I did like recitals and concerts and stuff for like orchestra and ballet and stuff like that. Yeah. But there was something about when that little red light came on, didn't matter how much I studied, like I knew all my lines, I knew exactly how, like what actions I was going to do. I knew everything. And then like that little red light came on, and then everything fell out of my head. I forgot everything. There were times I couldn't even like open my mouth. And I just knew, I was like, I have to come back tomorrow and do this. Like, I have to do this. I can do it.
Wow.
Just fell in love. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that
that's
happened later in
amazing.
life.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, how cool is that though, that like one day she just woke up and she's like, I'm gonna go do this. And just actually went and did it. Went and overcame that fear, overcame all the things that we tell ourselves when we're gonna try to do something new in life. Mm-hmm. Right? Like maybe you're not gonna meet the bar, or what if you don't know what you don't know, and like all these things that you tell yourself to convince you to not go and do something that you absolutely love. How many people have missed out on things that they really, really would fall in love with, but they just don't have the courage to do what you did by just stepping out and trying it?
True.
You know?
That's true.
I think it's great.
And I'll just say, this is a local Houston-based talent that we have with us today, just so you know. So this is all in the context, if you're from Houston or our area, from your world that she's talking about, where she did this in. So if you're working a job here in Houston, she was working a job here in Houston. You know, if you're passionate about doing it, she pursued her passion right here. She didn't have to go off to LA or New York or wherever. She started right here, you know, where she was, and started going after it. I have a different story, but I also started in Houston at a young age, but I started on the acting side of things. And as when I was young, I was. And now I've been directing and producing for most of my career. But I started on that other side here in Houston as well. And it was that whole world of acting in Houston and pursuing all that. And, you know, one thing my mom did really well, and I'm so thankful that she did this.
You have a good mama.
She's a good mama. Mama, I love you.
That's right.
I love you too, Mom.
She loves you too, Mom. Yes. She put me in everything. Like anything that I wanted to try, she would just sign me up for it. Soccer, tennis, baseball, whatever, acting, theater, dance, whatever it was. She just like, try it all. And her only deal with me was if I signed up for it for the season of baseball or the season of class, I just had to finish it. Yeah. Whatever it was, I had to finish the thing. Yeah. And so I really got a shot to know if I really liked it. Because day one, everybody's awkward and doesn't know what they're doing. Yeah. So she made me stay at it, give it a fair shot to see if I really liked it. And so when I was young, I would do all kind of stuff. But then as I got older, as it happens, your schedules get more, you're just more going on. You know, you get into middle school and high school, and you can't do it all. Your schedule won't allow it. School, electives, da-da-da-da. And so I had to pick like 2 things that I really enjoyed, that I gravitated towards. And I had played, you know, years and years of soccer and years of baseball and all those things. And I was just running short on time. I still love sports. So for me, it ended up staying in the tennis realm. Hey, tennis.
Hey. My favorite.
And acting. I so enjoyed it. So those became my things that I
love that.
But it was that pursuit and that testing out and that trying out that led me to that thing where I was like, I thrive here. I do love this. You know, similar to like when you plugged into that thing and you loved it. And what the cool thing was, I mean, it didn't sound like you had mama right there, you know, saying, go back and get in front of that red light again. I mean,
it's interesting because, first of all, thank y'all for saying that. I think it's important to point out for others just to know that like if you get some kind of bug or whatever notion to like go try something, to have the courage to do it. Because it is hard and you don't know if you like something and you know, but to your point, you know, I have really supportive parents, and it's really so important, I think, that like I loved the fact that whatever, like, I'm like, I'm going to quit my job and pursue acting. My mom's like, finally, you know, like, I mean, that's really cool, you know? So, especially later in life, you know? And for her to be like,
totally.
You know, do that
dream.
And I think, you know, much like your mom, she put me in dance when I was little, and, with orchestra, that was something that I wanted. They were bringing something to our 5th grade class, and it was new, and they brought swinging strings, what they called it.
How cool.
And and I'm still in touch with that same orchestra director, and I actually have picked up lessons again with him. And
oh, wow.
She does everything.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, but to that point, you know, sort of my parents instilling in me like to try new things, but also encouraging me when I decide that there's something that I want to pursue.
You know, in all different industries, you hear it, whether you're an athlete or whether you're in the arts or whether you're in math or whatever bent that you naturally have. They say that when it's in you, it's in you. I completely, wholeheartedly believe that about the arts. Like if you have the arts in you, it's like in you. You're gonna have to tap into that creativity somehow.
I 100% agree.
Whatever that is for you, it's kind of like if you're great with numbers, at some point you will have to gravitate towards that spreadsheet of numbers.
Yeah.
Like you're going to use numbers in
That's true.
something, because I believe they're gifts given to you, and that gift gives back to you when you use it.
I 100% agree with that. And I think that's kind of what happened to me several years ago when I let go of dance. I let go of music. And I kind of just went the corporate route, which is great. I mean, it could, if I kind of held on to something, I probably would have been fine there, but it was a void.
Yeah.
And I felt low, and I felt that void. And so going back to class filled me, like going to acting filled me.
Yeah.
And then now I think, as time goes on, I'm sort of being led to more of the arts, as like it's almost like once I got into it, it's like I remember how much it's like feeding me.
Right.
And so then when I started taking my viola lessons again, and it's so interesting because now, like when I practice at home, I'm like before an audition or before I go on set or something like that, if I'm like, oh, I'm going to play for a little bit just to sort of like calm my nerves or whatever. And then I'll play, and then I will just be reminded of how much it sort of gives me and how much it fills me and calms me. And so
It's just a gift used gives back to you.
Yeah.
And so there's so many people, you hear the thing like, do what you love, do what you love, do what you love. Okay, I agree with do with what you love, but not everything pays to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is the reality of life that you have to be smart about. But it doesn't mean you have to give up what gives back to you.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe you have a job that you're not, 'cause the arts is a harder area, I would say, to make a living in.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you give it up altogether. Find a way to keep the arts in you and working in you, like you're saying. I mean, if you have an instrument, play it. If you've got a camera, go on the weekends and start on a mission of taking pictures of butterflies. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Find something that that you love and that is passionate, and create in that. You never know what that can turn into.
Yes.
Right? Like you seeking and pursuing this craft of acting, you still had your job. You didn't quit your job until you were able to still pay the bills with what your art was being able to provide you. So I think it's, for all of us that are in the arts, is trying to find a way to keep art in our life, but then keep that passion going, though eventually you can swap over where you're doing more art that's paying you than art that's just feeding you.
And you know what? It's never been easier to participate with art or discover art that you want to participate with. It's never been easier. You got your phone. There's always something. I mean, if you want to take an art class, if you want to be, whatever you want to try, you can try it, and you can try it for almost nothing. Before you would have had to go on, sign up for a whole thing and do a whole thing. Like you could do anything, almost from anywhere in the world too, if you have access to, a smartphone or something like that. I mean, I remember I think of, so my dad passed away when I was quite young, but I think it was, he was a Louisiana boy. He was a cowboy. He was a roughneck. I mean, was just a world he was in. But he had a creativity he didn't know he even possessed. And it might came out more in a personality or in the back or on top of driving a backhoe or something like that at the time, right? Yeah. But there was a time when he was about 30, and it was probably only a number of years before he passed away. But he was about 30, and it was I want to say it was like Halloween. And, at that time, they were having some Halloween party at our house, and I was probably 2. I don't remember any of this story here. Yeah. But they were drawing all these, figures that were going to go on pieces of wood, and they were doing the ring tosses and all these things. And he drew this picture of some character, a creature or something like that. And it was absolutely amazing. Wow. And he did the painting and he cut it out. Everybody, and my mom was like, "What? You can draw?" And he goes, "Yeah, I guess so." Yeah. But it wasn't until he was 30, because it's the first time that he ever tried, that he was actually given an opportunity at a Halloween party or something, but it was in his late, it wasn't when he was a teenager, that he had the opportunity.
Yeah. Would you say that art is personal because it is a reflection of the way we see?
Yeah, it is personal. It is personal. And I hope I'm answering the question, but in terms of like, I play the viola, right?
Yeah.
But how I play a piece is
Yes.
different than how
Totally.
a different violist will play a piece.
Yep.
And or if you're a ballerina, you know, you can watch a ballerina and she can be very technically perfect.
Yep.
And then there's a difference with a ballerina who might feel it.
Yeah.
Sure, sure.
And
That
bring
like
something
tells
different.
a story
Totally.
Yeah.
in her dancing,
Yeah.
not just nailing the move.
Right. Because there are nuances
Yes.
to how you feel internally that show.
Yeah.
And then with acting, if I read a scene,
Yeah.
another actor is going to read the scene totally different.
Yep.
And she'll bring something different than I will.
Yes.
And they might both be great,
Yep.
but they're just going to be different.
Different.
I say that in communication.
Yeah.
You know, we could all deliver the same lines. Every single one of us is going to give a different inflection and stylistic and
Yeah.
tone, which is going to say a completely different message, even though we're all
Definitely.
saying the same thing.
Yeah.
You put a paintbrush in my hand and we're all said to, you know, you see those painting classes where they all line up and they're like, we're going to draw this tree. And then you look at a race,
Yeah.
you're like, how are they all looking at the same tree? That
Yeah.
does not look the same.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, art is your interpretation of what it is you're delivering. And I think that becomes personal. And sometimes I think that's why it's really hard for us to take the leap in doing it, is because you are having to come from a bit of an authentic, vulnerable place
For sure.
to do it.
Yeah.
And what if somebody doesn't like that? You're having to really, I mean, for the true art to come out of you.
And that you want to underscore what you just said there, true art. Because some people are actually scared to do that vulnerable place because it puts what's in here out in the open to be judged, to be looked at, to be executed. So people run the risk of doing that which is phony.
Yeah.
And that means that they're trying to do it like somebody else over and over and over and over. You know, they're doing it again and again because they saw it work here, they saw it work there. It's vulnerable because it might not work.
Yeah.
It might not. People might not like it. People might not. You know, and it's a thief though to the authenticity and the uniqueness
Yeah.
of what you can bring. And there's every great person that we know out out there, at some point had to step out and do their thing.
Yep.
It's not that we don't learn the form. We learn the form of acting.
Yeah.
We learn the form of cinematography.
Yeah.
We learn the form of it. But it's just to know, like, you got to know how to turn the camera on. Like you have to know as an actor how to work with the camera.
Yeah.
You have to know the apparatus that you're working within. But then after that, there's a place for interpretation.
Yep.
And that is like, I love all of that. You're talking about my heartbeat now,
Yeah.
as a director.
As a director,
I would for years, the way that I would study is because you can find any script online. I mean, virtually. You look and you can find any well-known script that's out there. So I would find one of those scripts. I mean, you take whatever your favorite film is, Ghostbusters. I don't know. I'm going 80s here. And you take your favorite film. You could find that script. You can look it up. You can take a scene and you can read that scene. And in the way that, as you said, an actor would interpret that, a director would see it, a cinematographer would light it, it's going to be different. So as a director, I would take that scene and this is just like kind of how I would work on my skills. And I would say, well, okay, they walk into the room. Where do they walk into the room? Where's the camera? Is it high? Is it low? Is it left? Is it right? How do I shoot my establishing shot? How do I would think all that through. And I'd say, here's where I'd put a camera. They move over here. My camera would move here. I would do all that. I'd block all that out, the camera blocking in my head. And I'd get my scene all set up for that one scene, in my mind, or write it down. And then I would watch the movie scene and I would see how they actually did it. And sometimes me and the director who did that were pretty close, and sometimes we are totally different. And a lot of times I'd be like, oh man, yeah, that's why they did that. That was actually a much better idea. And sometimes I was like, I liked my idea better. I think it came across great. And it ultimately comes down to that age-old compliment that people give people in Hollywood once they've done something really well, a film, award, they've won, and they said to them, you made great choices. And they give that compliment because they know there was about 1 million ways that could have been interpreted, that could have been executed, that could have been done. But the one choice that you make, and there might have been a lot of good choices, but the one you made was a really good choice.
Yeah.
So it's like you made a good choice.
Yeah.
And it comes down to that. You have to make choices. I think people get stuck in the whole paralysis by analysis. They don't know what to do, so they do nothing.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Step out, try to do a thing, go to an acting class, show up again for the next, record light or, whatever it is. So,
Yeah. In your acting, do you think there was a point where you transitioned into like, okay, I'm learning this craft. I'm like, anytime you're learning something new, in my opinion, you like really have to think about it, right? You're like thinking, okay, am I facing the light? Am I not facing the light? And don't turn my back to the camera. And like you're thinking all these like little rules of the trade, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And you're trying to make sure you're doing it just right.
Yeah.
And then there's a point where you're like, okay, I've got all that down. Somehow I have to like quit performing and just be who I am.
Yeah, there are a couple things to say about that. So at first, there's all the technical stuff, right? It's like, don't look at the camera. Don't, unless you're maybe doing commercial.
Right.
Don't blink. Don't move. Stop moving. Don't move your eyes. Don't move your face. Don't do these weird gestures, these big gestures. And then sometimes you might have to also adjust later because sometimes you're like, oh, nowadays I'm like blinking a lot, or nowadays I'm whatever. So there might be a constant adjustment. And then the other part was, it's so much harder than you think it will be to just be a human being once the camera turns on.
I know.
Like, I remember I would watch like playbacks at the beginning and I'm like, I'm just trying to be a human being. Why do I look like a robot? Like, why
am I so awkward
why
looking?
Can't I just breathe?
And like, I'm a human. Why can I not be a human? It's weird, right? It's just like, So yeah, getting all that out. And then, but then you're always getting better. You're always learning. You can always get better at your craft. But there is at least a point where you go, okay, well, I've moved past this and now I'm at this next stage.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally.
And that's always nice.
I think a testament to that is Tom Cruise, they say, is one of the hardest working actors. Hands down in Hollywood, and how he still repeats scenes over and over and over and over and over, rehearsing them, and his entire life he's done this. He is the epitome of the success of this industry in that realm. But a tribute to what you're saying, you're always refining that craft, and it's always changing, and you're always trying to raise the bar. And, his new film that's coming out, I don't know if y'all saw that, where he jumps and he does that. Oh my gosh. I mean, he's just a beast of a guy in that world, but I think you're right. I think where the internal you has to kick in and say, and I really think this is in acting and in many other things, directing and sports and all that. At some point, you have to go, okay, I've got all the fundamentals. I've got all this. Because I think people get stuck there. And they don't ever really allow their authentic self to just take over. Like, let that authentic self go, all right, I'm just going to let go and rip this, right? Like, I'm going to just be me in this role. That's where the magic happens, though. I'm working with a guy now who's doing an intro for a movie, and he changed the set to being more of he's sitting behind a desk like a news reporter kind of thing. But everything he had done up to this point, he's on the move. He's a young go-getter, hustler guy, and he's always moving and shaking in this travel show, right? And when he sat behind the desk, I was like, do you sit behind a desk actually ever? You don't strike me as the kind to sit behind the desk. He goes, no, but it works for the script. And I'm like, but you are the character, and it doesn't work for your character.
Yeah.
Works for the script, doesn't work for the character. You have to be honest to your character. So we got to get you moving. We got to get you out of the desk, and we got to get you moving again. But knowing your authentic self and what you bring as a character to something is like, this is where I shine. This is where my natural bent is.
Yeah.
This is what I do. But it's having the confidence to stand in that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think also you have to trust yourself at some point. Because, it's like if you if you know in that moment that that you should be doing one thing over another, and you second guess yourself because whatever reason, right? I mean, it comes through, like whatever you're feeling comes through. So if you're just vulnerable in that moment and you trust yourself and you do it because you have the fundamentals, you know, you've studied this character. If you've done your work, you've studied this character, you've made your decisions, you've thought about what this character was doing right before the scene. You thought about what her name is, her age, where she came from, who her parents were, what vices she has. You've done all of your work. And now you just have to trust that you've done the work and you know who your character is. And so then you say, well, would she do this in this moment? And you just make that, you make that choice. And if the director says no, gives you a note and redirects, then you do that. But until then, you know who your character is, and just trusting yourself in general. Like I remember years ago when I was new at acting, and I remember, but I wasn't totally new. Like I was at that point where it was like I should be trusting myself more than I probably was. And it was in class, and I remember I was going up to do a scene, and I said, should I take my script up there with me? And I remember one of my friends in the class, she said, no, leave it at your seat and go up there. You know this scene, and it just little things like that where you learn to trust yourself and you go up there, and I did. I knew my scene,
Yeah.
And so just proving to yourself that you got this,
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself you have to put yourself in that position at some point where you've put all the tools away, all the mental stuff, and you own it. Like you own the scene, you own what you own it. Like I remember my first day of directing on a big commercial anyway. And I mean, it was a big crew. I was in Southern California. Everybody was coming out of LA. Even my cinematographer was this really well-known cinematographer. Michael Negrin shot The Gilmore Girls and shot Las Vegas. He was shooting all these big shows. And I had way overcompensated for the fact that I had not ever directed before by hiring the best of the best around me, which was good at that time. But, I made every rookie mistake, and I'm working with special effects and kids and you name it, everything it was a big commercial. And I was so nervous. I was like, all day long, everybody's going to see I'm a phony, I'm a fake. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not really a director. And about halfway through the day, I realized nobody knew that I had never done this before. And I owned it. And that was on day one for me. I mean, I had done a lot of small directing before that, but that was a big step. It was a milestone when I owned it. And I'm like, no, I am a director. This is what I do. And it wasn't an arrogant thing. It was just owning up to, no, this is what I am. A lot of people their whole lives feel like or whatever part of the industry, like, oh, am I really? I mean, it takes them 20 years to get there. Do they really convince themselves, yes, I really am a this, I really am a that. You're that the day you start. It's always going to be, I'm always still learning as a director. Directors are far better, than I am. But am I a director? Yeah, I'm a director. I'm just, so there's a place where at some point you own your craft. And you just put your chest out and you dive in. I love that.
Yeah. And I think there's, there's an understanding it's understandable in our industry to have that sort of, it lends to doubting yourself. Especially, as an actor, you get rejected like 100 times a month, right? Like how many auditions do you send in? And and then the funny thing is, like, people will be like, did you hear back? Did you hear back? And you're like, no, they just never call you. And that's how I know I didn't get it. It's just like,
right. That's right.
And so, I think that, if you have like a corporate job, I'm not getting rejected. It's like I go there, I do my job, I do it right, and I get paid, and I go home every single day. But there's like a constant, in our industry, a constant like judging of us.
Right.
Yeah. That's so true.
I think there's a matter of like really understanding that a lot of times when you don't get a part, it's not personal. It's that I didn't have blonde hair, or I wasn't tall enough, or I wasn't it could just be like, I didn't look what that part was,
Yeah.
which is fine. It's like, each character has whatever thing that the casting director is looking for, and it might have nothing to do with you. And a lot of those directors, if you will just go in and do the work, you're not going in there to get a job, but you're going in there because you get to play today. Like I get to do a scene. I get to act today, right?
Yeah.
And that casting director might go, you know what? She wasn't right for this, but she was really good.
Totally.
Yes.
100%.
And
For sure.
put that in their back pocket,
Right.
So I think it lends to doubting yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's not a real, there's parts of it that are, I was going to say, it's a very creative and emotional space. So it lends itself to that.
Yeah.
And like you said, because it is creative, it opens up another side of you that is typically not the analytical side of your brain.
Yeah.
So it does lend itself to all of that. And and to your point, having done a bazillion casting calls as a director, sometimes it might just be you were perfect for it, but you know what? 3 other people were also perfect for it, and I had to only choose one.
Right.
Yeah.
So you probably were the perfect one, but that whole choice thing had to make a choice.
Right. Or
Yeah.
or there was a name talent.
Or there was a name tag. There could be a bunch of different things, and
Or a lot of factors on the marketing side of the film. I mean, there's just so many things that go
variables.
into picking cast and roles.
And I'll just say, not to interrupt you, but when you mention that about someone remembering you, I did that continually. Like I'd go through. I'm like, I saw so much good talent today, and I can't use all this talent. They're not right for this. But I would take those headshots, and I personally had a file of people. I'm like, remember that and I would actually always think about, how do I use that person? I'm going to use that person one day. And oftentimes I would. I mean, you see director and producer duos all the time who are always using the same actors over and over because they love working with them. It happens the same way at any scale of the industry. There's people that we start working with, and we love working with them, over and over and over. So don't get discouraged. Be authentic. Have fun when you're doing it.
Yeah. And there was a film that we were that I actually helped cast, and it never shot over the pandemic. And there was somebody, it was going to shoot out in LA, and there was an actress. She came in on like, it was on Zoom or whatever the casting thing that we used, but she came in and she was so good. And we just said, and she read for the lead part, and we said, well, she's too young, but she's so good, Yeah. And I was casting for it, and I just I went, that night I just kept thinking about her. She was so good, right? So the next day, I think it was, I went to the writer and the director, and I said, listen, I know maybe we were looking for something else for this other role, but can we just bring her in? I really want to bring her in and just have her read for this other role. And she came in, she looked totally different. She dressed that other part, and she read for that part, and she nailed it.
Wow.
But goes to show, it's like, she was perfect. She was amazing. And it was just that she was just too young for that part. That's all. It had nothing to do with her talent. She was extraordinary. One of the best actors, honestly, that I've seen.
Wow.
And I couldn't take her for that part.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I love when I hear somebody who was a former actor like myself, a former actor who is now on the other side of the table and doing casting calls and all that. You're far more gracious with your talent.
Yeah.
You understand. You've been in their shoes. How has that process been for you? Like doing on the casting director?
Oh my gosh, it's so much fun.
So less stressful.
Well, yeah, to an extent, right? Stressful in different ways, but definitely less stressful in terms of emotions, having to pour out your emotions and vulnerability. But that has been a lot of fun. I love actors. And so kind of when I was going through that process, and it was funny because the director and the writer, they were like, is this your other thing? And I'm like, I think it might be, but I loved it. I love actors. I love seeing sort of when they would come in, and I could see their minds working, when we redirected and gave them notes, and I could see sort of from one take to the next, how they switched. And it was interesting to be on that side to sort of take a little masterclass sort of on, on that other side. I loved it.
That's great.
And I love it. It's a lot of fun.
I always loved it too.
Yeah. So do you have any projects that you're working on now? And if you can tell us about those,
Yeah.
we would love to hear
Yeah.
what do you have going now? And, we've kind of followed your journey through, loving the arts younger, getting to taking the leap, going into acting classes, getting some gigs.
Yeah.
And then that's led you to many other features and films and stuff like that. So tell us a bit about that.
So right now I am in, I guess, pre-production of a short film that we'll be shooting hopefully in the fall, where I am the lead. And that is written by a friend out in Chicago and going to be directed by a local director here in Houston.
Oh, right.
Yeah, she's amazing. I don't know how much I can actually say about it. But
Sure.
but it's a short, like thriller sort of mystery film. And it's a gritty film and a lot of fun. It's something that my friend wrote with me in mind. She called me one day and she said, "Hey, I wrote this film.
Wow.
Thinking
That's
of
great.
you, and I want to send it over to you."
Yeah.
And and it's a really fun and interesting short film, and it's different than probably roles people would normally put me in. And so I was really thankful for that.
Yeah.
Because I always kind of want to get into the gritty sort of filming, but people don't, normally put me in those roles.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's cool, and I'm excited about that.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I might be helping with another casting, so we'll see on a short film.
Fun.
And then other than that, I'm working on like some like scenes to shoot that I'm writing to put onto a reel.
Oh, wow.
Which is very important.
Cool.
Yes.
Actors, get your reels.
Yes.
So I'm writing scenes. I wrote a scene with a friend of mine. We shot it, and then I wrote another scene for us. Because the first scene we wrote together. This second scene I wrote. We'll shoot that, and I have more scenes that I will be writing to
Complete your reel.
to complete my reel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That is really cool.
So, like, if people want to like stay in contact with you, if they want to hire you as an actor, a casting director, or whatever, how do they connect with you?
Yeah. So I'm definitely on IMDb. I'm on Instagram at Monica Mansy,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
reach out to me.
All the good social medias
All the good
that we
social
all have
medias, yeah.
today that you go stalk people on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's so exciting. We're just so happy that you came and sat with us and gave some nuggets to people that are, looking to get into acting. I mean, we've had agencies on, we've had other actors, actresses. I mean, what a gem it is to get to sit with somebody that's doing it, that's in the industry, that like did not come from this industry, because that's the other misconception a lot of people think is like, well, I don't know anything about it. Go sign up for an acting class, jump in, and, here you sit, with films and all the things underneath your belt from just having the courage to go. So we applaud you for your courage. Thank you for sharing your gift of acting with the rest of us in this world. We appreciate it and enjoy
very
watching
sweet.
the
Thank
things that you're in. And, go show her some love. Follow her on all of her social platforms. Stay up to date with all the films that she's in. Support some of those, and
Hire her as an actress. I mean, come on, look at this talent over here. Come on.
Yeah. So
Thank you both.
we've enjoyed it. Thank you.
I've enjoyed this immensely. Thank you both very much.
Yes,
We're glad.
absolutely.
We're glad.
Thank you.
So until next time, we'll see you on Set Life.